this is the interesting question. You've gone from fronting a punk band, and then all of a sudden you're promoting events, and then you're creating superstar DJ lineups, which hasn't been done in the UK before, let alone Ibiza. How on earth has that transition happened?
I didn't want the Prodigy. But I was trying to do a promotion out of the box, and I wanted to promote E17, new single coming back, will make a fortune. And the agent said to me, he goes, I'll give you E17, but you have to also do a booking for the Prodigy. They only had that song, Charlie Says song,
yeah. And it was right at the start.
I wasn't mad about them, and I didn't really understand them, but he said, they've got a new album coming out. It's called The Guilty Generation. Said, we've got a tour book for them. It's almost like a rehearsal. I thought I was going to lose money on them, and it was something like, he wanted something like $3,000, and I've got to pay for it as well. He said, yeah, it's only $3,000. I said, you'll smash it. They sold out literally within about 48 hours. But I think that Guilty Generation tour was a big turning point for them. It took them from being it could have been anyone to being superstars. I mean, it really broke them, and I'm proud to say I had the first gig.
Now that was different because it used to be just one headliner, didn't it? Am I right in saying that?
It's my naivety because, I was used to going to a gig and it'd be like 2 or 3 really good bands playing, and I was like, in my naivety and not believing that anyone would pay to see DJs. I mean, the Corn Exchange was about 3,000 deep. And so I was like, no, we've got to have on 3 massive DJs, not just one. And they said, you can't do that. I mean, I had no concept at that time about programming a night so that it built up, from something to somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we're having Roger Sanchez, we're having Masters at Work, we're having Paul Oakenfold.
When you were programming Pacha, who did you bring in? What was your era?
I did the deal with Solomon to bring Solomon in.
That time catapulted Solomon, didn't it? It really did make him fly. Yeah, I remember that very well.
It just went massive after the 3rd week, and then been there over 10 years now. He's a superstar and everything else.
Stevie, thank you very much for joining me today. This is your first podcast, isn't it?
First ever podcast, yeah.
And I've got a big Pacha flag in the background, so it's about time. It's about time that I've got someone from Pacha to come in.
Did you put that up just for me?
No, I did not. No, I did. I put it up to cover my dodgy paintwork. To be honest, in the corner up there. Hopefully, it won't zoom in on me. I'm going to be having one of those big cream posters. The A1 posters.
Yeah.
My friend has he's been holding on to one of them for me for ages, and I keep on meaning to bring it back from Ibiza. But yeah, the Pacha flags. I've had that for 20 odd years. I think it must be that old. I've got the space ones as well.
So you wasn't down on the beach waving it then, giving out flyers?
No, I wasn't. I was never a PR, unfortunately. I did try my hand at PRing for one night at Nightlife in the West End, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So Steve, first question is, where does the name Vaynes come from?
Okay. I mean, this goes back to when I was in my band called the Dead Vanes, and we were a naughty band. We were into a lot of naughty things. And so we spelt the name Vayne, Vaynes, so we could talk about being dead vain. Look how beautiful we are. Literally dead veins. Because, the crew that we was running around with were pretty hardcore, and a lot of them had dead veins.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So that's what, but I spelled it with the Vaynes so that I could deny anything to do with the dark side and just say, no, we're just dandies.
Gotcha. So this is a strange one because I'm speaking from a punk rocker who went through to Pacha Ibiza, and obviously you've got your new book coming out very, very soon. Now, I don't see the crossover there, and probably a lot of people won't immediately see that. Because myself, I'm not personally into a lot of proper music, as I call it, band music. I call it proper music for some reason. And my friends are into like bands and Oasis and all that lot, and I just don't get a buzz out of it. It's always been electronic music for me. So let's rewind to Leeds. What was life back then? Is that where you started out?
Yeah, I mean, I was literally born in a house in Leeds, in a cobbled street, back to back, two up, two down. You know, it was the low end of the market. And I was born in a house there, and after a few years in that area where I lived, all the extended family lived there. Mums and dads, aunties, uncles, granddads, even great grandmothers, cousins, everybody lived there. So the extended family unit was massive. You know, everybody was a parent to us kid. If you were a kid, anyone who was over 16 was a parent, basically. So you had a lot of good grounding and guidance. But then the council decided that they wanted young families like my mother and my mum's father's family to move on to the new council estates, which looked amazing on paper. And
Yeah,
we were one of the first families to move into a council estate. It was called the Winmore, which I loved the name, you know, Winmore, and it was brilliant. I mean, I we showed up there. I was about 4 years old or something, and I had a fantastic childhood on the Winmore estate. So different to the cobble streets of Kirkstall. And all the kids my age, we all had a great time. Everybody knew each other. It was fantastic. But the problem was that suddenly the parents were cut adrift from the extended family. So there was no kind of father, uncles, aunts to like keep them in line.
Yeah.
Because
I understand.
they were young parents, you see.
How far away? How far
It was
away
like
were
it
these
was
new
from
estates?
one side of the city to the other, so it was like a good 5-7 mile trek. And by bus, it was about 3 buses. So there was a massive cut off happened, and my father was a musician. He was his job was playing the piano in clubs and pubs and theatres all over the country. And in that lifestyle, there's lots of temptation. Even back then, there was, to live a rock and roll life, basically. And inevitably, our family, my mum and father, they split up for their own reasons, but mainly to do with that, not having any glue keeping them together. My father still being a young man, playing the field. And it wasn't just our family, it was like lots of families for all different reasons. But the music that from my father was passed on to me. So I was kind of bathed in music from being born. I learned to play the piano and the guitar from being aged 5 or 6 years old. I started little bedroom bands, like from 7, 8 years old. And my first record out when I think it just turned 16, 17, which I did independently. So yeah, it started there in Leeds. I mean, it was out of the ashes of this big social change. Punk rock came along at the same time. So for all us kids with like parents who were breaking up, punk rock came along, and it was just like, fuck you, everybody. It's all about us.
Yeah.
And we all bonded over music as teenagers. We had lots of shared experiences. That's why
Hmm.
punk was so massive. I believe it wasn't just the music. I think it tapped into a generation of people who went from a really solid extended family into like basically a one parent family. Over the space of 15 years, it happened. From 65 to 80. Then you never had a divorce before then.
Yeah.
Parents never got divorced. But all them kids whose parents were getting divorced when they were 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, there was a massive void. And punk rock came along and it was a voice. That's what so I believe that's one of the reasons punk took on so really in the north, at least. I don't know about down south, but definitely in the north. We weren't. It weren't just happening to us; it was happening wherever council estates were being built. It was a similar trend, and this is where punk became so big in the northern cities.
That is fascinating to hear, because electronic music, well, it wasn't called electronic, acid house kind of filled a void for me and my friends in South London, because they're all in, obviously this was the next generation, but that's what bonded us, music, and our adventures into warehouses and stuff. So this was the generation before, but we had our own issues in like South London in the 90s, in the 2000s. There was a lot of problems then. Divorce was a common thing as well, and violence and this and that, and football violence, and loads of different things were going on all at the same time. And then all of a sudden, dance music had come along. So it's really interesting to hear that about punk, because I didn't know that.
Well, I'll tell you something. When I was about 13 years old, I had a choice that it wasn't a choice for someone, it was a choice I could see I had to make. It was either become a football hooligan and join the service crew, or it was to really get into the bands and the music.
Yeah.
I saw that incident happen down at Ellen Road after a midweek game, where a load of lads stomped on, a couple of fellas, and I was there in my mate's room, and my mates told them over and joined in, and I didn't. I kind of stood on the spot, and I thought, shouldn't I be joining in, or am I doing the right thing not joining in? And I made a decision right there and then that I love football, but going that route, being in that gang was not going to be for me. It was, for everyone else, it was fine. It was their choice to make. But I chose to go full in on the music. But I remember distinctly after that thinking, God, I could go with all my mates and we could go home and away, because that was a real social thing, not just a thing about football. That was a real social bonding thing that people had. But I went there, I just went music, music, music. Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, no, I saw this football violence side of it quite up front. Unfortunately, one of our friends in the early acid house era, which was still, there was a lot of football violence going on until it kind of squashed it a bit, was killed at one of the fights. I can't remember what game it was. But yeah, we saw that the real horrible side of it. But yeah, we were very much away from all of that, thank God.
Yeah, but the best thing about rave music and acid house music is that it just, after 10 years of that weekly traveling home and away, we call them flickheads, the football thugs, because they all had like short hair at the back and long at the front. They kept flicking all the time, and they hated us. We were the punks and new romantics, so they hated us. And remember going into town, it was like a game of cat and mouse, like we knew that at some point in the night, these flickheads would either attack us or cause trouble with us or whatever. And then when Acid House came out, oh my God, all of that disappeared. It was the greatest thing ever. It was like, God, there's no violence in this room.
Everyone was under the same roof, weren't they? Together.
Exactly.
Even the flickheads and you guys all under the same roof. I was having the same conversation with Trace Harris this week about he experienced that as well, where he saw the football hooligans and literally vanished because the same people fighting on the terraces were now hugging each other in warehouses at the weekend. So,
and it's funny, nearly all those football guys, they was always into music, because I knew them when we was at school, and at the school discos and the youth clubs and everything, and they all loved Northern Soul. That was a big driver for them, and they also loved jazz funk. So they were into music, but Northern Soul had kind of been a little bit before their time, so there was no scene for them. Jazz funk is I don't know what it is, you know. It's not really a scene, where you know, loads of, like a social scene. Um, and then they suddenly had something that they could get into, and the music was, well, it kind of brought everyone together. You know, it didn't matter
Yeah.
if you were punk, if you were a rocker, if you were into jazz funk, if whatever you were into, that hypnotic beat of rave and acid was just different, and it was just, along with everything that went with it, you know, it just binded everybody together.
It
It
was
was
so
an
it
amazing
was just so
moment.
unique, wasn't it? It was so unique, and just stood out from. So what made you? It's obviously you had your band, the Dead
Yeah,
Veins.
yeah.
When did that happen, and what sort of sound were you trying to make?
I had a couple of bands, and then the Dead Veins became like the band. You know, I'd messed around with 2 or 3 bands, and I'd done a couple of tours and things like that. And I knew that really wanted to do this. You know, my first tour in Holland, you know, blew my mind. You know, it was amazing. I mean, I was like a rock star. I wasn't a rock star, but I felt like one. You know, I'd met a girl on tour. You know, it was my first groupie, I suppose. Um, it wasn't really. We were just amazing. I felt like I was like Mick Jagger or somebody. It was amazing. Anyway, the band that came out of it was a band called the Dead Veins, and we were like a cross between punk and rock and roll. So I coined I coined a phrase called punk rock and roll. So we were a punk rock and roll band, and this was in about 1983. 82, 83. Yeah, let's say. Well, we started in 81, but we've got really going in 82.
What were you? Were you the singer? Were you a
I was the
guitarist? Were you a
singer. Well,
musician?
I'd
Singer
started
and
out.
musician.
But my bands before, I was a guitar player, then I was a guitar playing singer, and then I ended up being the singer by accident, basically, because
These things
I couldn't
happen.
get anyone else to do it. and and then I ended up being quite good at it. Not the singing, but the performing. You know, I was quite a good performer on stage, and so we built up a good niche following, and you know, we got to make albums, got to go on tour with my heroes. Um, my heroes at the time, you probably haven't heard of them, or even your listeners, but there was a guy called Johnny Thunders who had been in the New York Dolls. He was my guy, and I ended up going on tour with him and becoming very good friends with him. And he even stayed in my house in Leeds for a while. You know, he was from New York. And so I started fulfilling my dreams in punk rock and roll, you know, recording music, recording albums, going on tour, playing with my heroes. And it was great.
How
It
did
was
you break
great.
through then as a band? How did you obviously did well? How did you build up your community, and did you just
How did I
have
what,
some?
sorry?
How did you build up your popularity? Because it sounded like you did
Well,
really well.
we became famous in our neck of the woods before
Yeah,
we even,
locally.
yeah, our local area, before we even played a gig, because me and the drummer were also like knocking drugs out to everyone in the area. So, you know, so we were like knocking gear out, like, you know, dope and what have you. And so we go around all these student houses and all these houses in the area of Leeds 6. And we'd be telling everyone how great our band was before we'd even done a rehearsal. So everyone was talking about, oh, that band, the Dead Veins, you know, it's Stevie and then I said, oh, we've got a tape. And then we made a cassette. And when we were delivering our drugs, we'd deliver the cassette to everybody. So everyone in the area had a cassette. And so when I would go, everyone would be playing our cassette in their houses. And eventually we did a gig at the Warehouse in 1984 with Johnny Thunders, my hero. We got the support slot for his show in Leeds.
So you must have been all right then. You must have been quite
I
good
mean,
then.
that was the greatest amount of my life at that time. You know, that we were on with Johnny Thunders, you know,
Wow, yeah.
and it was amazing. We were great. And we did. Johnny Thunders was surprised because the room really reacted to the support band. A lot of the time, the support band, get met with disdain, but because we built ourselves up so much, when we did the gig, people just went crazy. So John was
Well,
like,
you
"Wow."
certainly had a unique way of promoting yourself. I've never heard.
I
I've
mean,
never heard
look, I
anyone.
mean,
Well, I say
it's
probably a
more
few
than 40 years
DJs.
ago, so I think the statute of limitations have obviously
Yeah,
run out on all that.
I sometimes worry about what I say on here because we all weren't. This industry is not a church, as I say, and we've all been up to
Look, I
some
mean,
things, and
we were all, we weren't stood outside schoolyards or outside youth clubs. We were in an area with loads of students, loads of bands
and
and
it.
artists and like-minded people, and everybody wanted to just kick back.
If you're, I mean, if you're in an area with students, I mean, it is just a license to print money
We
around
used
that
to
that era and the rave era.
we used to call it going for a grant
It's
because when the
just it was
students
crazy.
arrived, they'd all have these grants, and so
Yeah,
we'd
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
try
yeah.
to find students with grants, and then they'd befriend them, and some of them become really good friends actually. But we would
We
after the money.
used to we I remember Freshers Week at university used to be a really important time for the local drug dealers because
Oh my
there
god, it
was
was
always this
amazing.
fresh. There's always this freshers weeks that arrived, and like the universities back then, I don't know what they're like now. I haven't got a clue, but I remember like there was a five or six campuses, and they all had like 5 to 10,000 people on them. A lot of foreign, but most of them were kids, were drinking, were going to the pubs. That was still a cool thing. It was cheap enough. They were all going clubbing. They were all taking drugs, because it was that sort of generation.
It was loads of kids away from home for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let loose. Let,
So they were all just letting loose. So us, I mean, we weren't students. We were like scallywags from the estates who
yeah, yeah, yeah.
lived in the student area with
They
bands.
didn't know where to get anything from, did they?
I always claim that I sold some gear to Keir Starmer because he was at Leeds University at the time.
That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
I said, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well, I'm not geared up to Keir Starmer. I mean, I didn't.
imagine having a photo of that nowadays.
But I'm telling you something. If
So
he was in Leeds 6 at that time, I am sure he was indulging like everybody else. Because he used to go to the warehouse. It was a place, and everybody was at it down there. There was no students who were innocent. None of them were.
no,
They all wanted
you'd
to
be
experience
surprised.
life.
You'd be surprised. Everyone I know was at it at university. I mean, everyone, because obviously it was a big explosion of ecstasy and amphetamine and all this sort of pink champagne, as they used to call it, all that lot, And so obviously this was all in Leeds. It's always had a strong culture with music, hasn't it? It's always undeveloped. How did those early punk years in Leeds, how did that prepare you for the moving on to other things? I mean,
Yeah,
how did
well, I
it?
mean,
Because obviously you.
it was from doing that Johnny Thunders gig at the warehouse. We got we got a record deal to put an album out, and we put that album out, and suddenly we was in some of the newspapers, Enemy, Melody Maker, Sounds, things like that. I mean, not in a big way, but it got us enough attention that we could get gigs outside of Leeds. And to our surprise, we'd show up at these gigs outside of Leeds, and people knew who we were. So we'd show up in Nottingham, and there'd be people who had the record, or we'd be in London, and people knew us, and it was shocking to us. Like, how the hell, I mean, we haven't sold that many records, but it was niche stuff, and then we ended up getting onto some good tours. We went on tour with Johnny Thunders all over the UK, all over Europe. Went on tour with The Mission. Went on tour with a band called the Gun Club, who was really big as well. So we got some really good tours. Other bands liked us. Yeah, they wanted us around. They wanted us to be on tour with them, and that just built up our following. And we ended up making 3 albums, 5 EPs, couple of singles, and yeah, it lasted from about 82 through to 91.
So basically, you had the right chemistry for the other bands, and they, in not so many words, but they liked having you on board. So through their communities, that other people have been exposed to you as well, and you were growing off the back
Exactly.
of that.
Yeah, it's hard to go
Ah,
on top
right.
of a band because, usually the audience is there just for the band, but when the other band actually publicly supports you and says, they're on tour because we love them, it gives you an even chance. And so we picked up lots of fans from these bands that we went on tour with. And, so that allowed us to keep going and keep playing and doing our own tours.
And
So,
sorry,
so yeah.
how many years were you doing this?
Well, I was doing bands basically 17 to age 27. So it was a 10-year stint. But the Veins, the Dead Veins was basically 82, 83 through to 91.
Okay, so just under that. So this is the interesting question. You've gone from fronting a punk band, and then all of a sudden you're promoting events, and then you're creating superstar DJ lineups, which hasn't been done in the UK before, let alone Ibiza. How on earth has that transition happened? This is
Well, I'll
probably
tell
one
you.
of the. This is what piqued my interest about doing this podcast, was because the
Well, I'll
two
tell you.
worlds are so far apart.
Well, like I said, my hero at the time was Johnny Thunders, and I'd become very good friends with him by this time. And in 1991, April 1991, he died. He was found in a
Okay.
hotel in New Orleans with overdose. In actual fact, the reality is that he had leukemia, and he was very, very ill, and
Yeah.
that mixed in with some drugs he took from some people that night, did kill him. And when I got the news, because I'd been with him we've done a show at the London Marquee in the December, and the plan was to go on tour again in Europe in the summer. But my band and Johnny Thunder's band all over Europe, all over the UK, and so and Johnny was in a really good place, and we were all excited. And then I got the news, and it shocked me out of myself. And it was the first time
Yeah.
I thought to myself, if I don't stop doing what I'm doing, then I'm going to be the next one.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me that even though I'd kind of flown this flag for this reckless lifestyle of, I don't care, if I'm in the 27 club, I'm in the 27 club.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
got to
Great
27
fun.
and Johnny died, I suddenly realized I don't want to be in the 27 club. I want to live. There's a lot of, life is great. Life is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I literally said, that's it. No more rock and roll for me. I'm putting my guitar down. I'm walking away from it. If I don't, I'm going to end up killing myself by
Okay.
accident. And so I just stopped one day. Boom. Then
Overnight. Boom.
literally overnight.
Yep. Wow.
And
And
and then
that's the effect that Johnny's death had on you as a musician and as an artist. You thought,
and as
were
a
you worried
person,
about were you worried about your behavior before?
I mean, if you read the book, you'll read how dark it was. I never thought it was dark at the time. I was just having a great time.
No, you
But
don't, do you?
I really just embraced it all. I couldn't get enough of anything and everything. Couldn't get
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
And we were called the Dead Veins, as I say, for a couple of reasons. When Johnny died, I just said, that's it, stop. And I just stopped.
Wow.
Boom. And I realized at that point that I had that capability to just stop at any time. If something I was doing wasn't right, I could just stop. Very lucky like that. My girlfriend's going, well, what we're going to do now? What are you going to do? Blah, blah, blah. I said, no idea, sign on. I don't know. So I was in the local pub and I picked up the local newspaper because there's always one on the table. And I turned to the back pages where the jobs were. Like I'd never looked in the jobs vacant section ever. But I opened it up and I saw this thing that said event coordinator, the Corn Exchange wanted. And I thought, I can do that. I didn't really even know what it was. I thought, I can do that. And for some reason, I sent off an application. You know, I sent off a letter to apply for the job. And the Corn Exchange is a beautiful, beautiful building. And I've grown up in it my whole life. You know, it's an amazing building in the middle of town. And they asked me to come down for an interview. And to my surprise, I mean, I said anything I thought they wanted to hear. And at the end of it, they said, the job's yours. I
My
couldn't
Lord.
believe it. I was like, wow, I've got a real job. And it was at the Corn Exchange, and it's event coordinating. And
you didn't know what you were doing.
well, they said to me, the two things that we've got going right now, they wanted to make money from the venue, from the space. And they said the two things we've got right now that you have to look after is the craft fair on a Saturday and an antique fair on a Sunday. And I thought, wow, from where I was a couple of months ago to like, you know, going crazy in the back room of some gig somewhere, to now going to look after a craft fair and an antique fair.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was so bizarre. I mean, the comedy of it really appealed to me. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be like the market trader, you know, like the market inspector, you know, like making sure all these tables are set up right, they're in the right place. All this. I loved it, you know. I was like, and they said, no, listen, you can't just do this. Oh, I was loving it, you know, like, you know, move that table 4 inches that way, you know. You can't sell that on here. This is 1991. I said, why don't we have a rave? The timing was perfect because that scene was started to become like a national scene, you know, from out of the warehouses and out of the fields. It was suddenly getting traction into clubs and becoming
legally.
yeah, and becoming like a social phenomenon. I mean, I know it was going from 86, 87, 88, but it was a very elitist at that point, or very niche. But by 91, it was really starting to permeate all over, you know, all over the UK. It wasn't just like a niche thing; it was becoming
But
a popular thing.
the licenses were being granted as well, weren't they, in the nightclubs?
Well,
For
I mean,
the late licenses.
It was a 2 o'clock license at that point, and
Okay, so you're
and
fairly
so when
early one
I
then.
wanted to do the rave at the Corn Exchange, well, first of all, the police and the fire department and the building control was like, no, you can't do a rave in the Corn Exchange. So I had to stop calling it a rave. That was the first thing I had to do, because I realised that people weren't liking that word.
No,
It was
they
like
still
punk,
don't.
you know. It was like they didn't like punk for a while. They didn't like rave. So I said, well, we're not doing a rave. They said, because inside the Corn Exchange, it had something like 50 speciality shops that were all based around fashion and, you know, like clothing and shoes and hair and all to do with, like, you know, youth culture, basically. And so I said, no, we're going to do a fashion show with all the shops in the Corn Exchange. And we're going to invite all the shops from the Victoria Quarter, which was a similar thing, to do the fashion show with us. So it's more of a Leeds City thing. And I'm going to get Vidal Spoons to come and do all the hair and have all the models and all the makeup. So we have an international brand with us. And I'm going to get the local television station to come and film it. I said, the DJs are just, they're just add-ons. And they said, well, who's the DJs? And I said, well, it's Mike Pickering and John De Silva from the Hacienda. And they're like, so it's a rave thing. I said, no, it's a fashion show. It's a
You're
fashion
just
show.
trying
And
to slip that one
they're the
past
best
them.
DJs.
Yeah, which they were at the time, though, weren't they?
Pardon?
They were the best DJs at the time, the most wanted DJs
Without
at the time.
doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
there were others, you know, Nipper and Fergie and others who were brilliant too.
Yeah.
But if in the north, if you wanted to fill your club, there was Mike, John, Graham Park. Them three were always like a guaranteed full house. And I had them on, but the fashion show, I had to do the fashion show. to get the license. But the fashion show went on so long that by the time John De Silva came on, he was like, the last DJ of the night. But Mike Pickering was smart. He went on earlier. And John Pickering, he wanted to do the closing set. But by the time it came to it, he only had time to play 2 songs.
God.
So he played the song, and then the second song, I said, sorry, mate, you've got to stop on this song. He said, no way. I said, no, the lights are all going to come on. And I said, but I'm still going to pay you. And he goes, yeah, you fucking are going to pay me. And then it clicked to me, oh, it's a business, this as well. This DJ thing's a business, This guy knows his value. He wants to get his money. He's not doing it just for fun. So it clicked on me that, because to me, DJs were so alien as who wants to go see a DJ? But then I realized, these guys are really, really on it.
How did you promo the event back then? Was it street scenes or
radio? We made flyers, but we made a flyer for our first event. It was like, for that one, it was just flyers, and it was just all the shops that was involved in the fashion show and all the models. The word of mouth just went crazy, and that particular event was really. We had people there just from Leeds. Once I knew that this raving thing is good, these parties are good, we decided we're going to do one every month. And so then the next ones that we did, we made a flyer. It was an 8-page booklet, and I had Roger Sanchez, Masters at Work, and I think it might have been David Morales or Paul Oakenfold. I can't remember which one it was, but definitely Roger Sanchez and Masters at Work. And each page of the flyer had a double page about who the DJ was and all the records that they had out. And this is 1991. I mean, I was so late to the game. They already had a discography that was massive, but it was all new to me. And we distributed them. It was called America, and we distributed them all over Yorkshire and as far up as Middlesbrough, Sheffield, over to Manchester, and we ended up selling tickets all over the north. People were coming to the Corn Exchange from everywhere.
They were all playing the same event, weren't they? Which was different.
All of them were on the same night.
Now that was different because it used to be just one headliner, didn't it? Am I right in saying that?
It's my naivety because. I was used to going to a gig and it'd be like 2 or 3 really good bands playing, and with the DJ thing, it was like you had the warm-up DJ who was a resident. Then you had like a mid-level kind of, maybe a decent name, but not a headliner. And then you'd have the headliner. So you'd have your warm-up, the guy who set up the headliner would take it away. And then sometimes the resident would go on and do the last half an hour as people were going out. But I was like, in my naivety, and not believing that anyone would pay to see DJs. I mean, the Corn Exchange was about 3,000 deep. And so I was like, no, we've got to have on 3 massive DJs, not just one. And they said, you can't do that. I mean, I had no concept at that time about programming a night so that it built up, from something to somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we're having Roger Sanchez, we're having Masters at Work, we're having Paul Oakenfold. I think that's where it was, Paul Oakenfold. And they said, well, where are they going to play? I said, well, that Masters at Work lot, they all seem a little bit kind of more lighter musically wise, so they can go on first. Well, I had a resident as well for the first hour, so they can go on first because their music's a bit lighter sounding. Roger Sanchez, that's kind of very familiar and it's easy to like his music. And then we'll have that Paul Oakenfold on last because his stuff seems a little bit more crucial, which it kind of was at the time. And so that's our program. So it was a kind of a natural progression. And the DJs were so good that they also knew what to play at that time in the night, So Masters at Work knew how to set up Roger, who knew how to set up Paul. So
you had natural musicality in you anyway.
Well, as I say, I did just, but I didn't really know the music of them. I listened through to who I was booking, and I said, well, it's got to go in that way, their music is a little bit more, like I say, more lightweight. It seemed to me. And Rogers seemed to be a bit more kind of everybody's music, and Paul seemed to be a bit more, kind of a bit more kind of something, like this is it, So
yeah.
So that's why I did it that way. But it weren't because.
How did you get the budget?
What?
How did you get the budget to do 3 headliners?
I'll tell you, they weren't very expensive in them days.
Yeah, I was about to say that as well.
I paid, I think it was, I paid 300 quid for masters. Maybe, no, 500 quid for masters. That 300 for Roger. And Paul, he was the cheapest one. No, I had Paul at 300. And he'd no, I had him at 200, and he'd drive up in his Peugeot 205. And he'd do the gig, and then he'd drive home again. He'd drive from London in his Peugeot 205, do the gig, and then drive back again. And then the Americans, they would just, I don't know where they were, whoever their agent was would take them on to their next place. But
you weren't flying them in. You weren't flying them in. No, they were already on.
They were here
in England.
There was a couple of girl agents down in London. Oh, the names on the tip of my tongue. Lynn Cosgrove.
Yes,
she was one. She had all the Americans, and then a Karen from Unlimited. I think it was Unlimited DJs. Charlie Chester's ex-wife, Karen Dunn, and she had all the British DJs. I don't think when Lynn had these Americans coming in, she'd have them coming in and then try to sell them. But there weren't that much call for them up north. I was one of the first people to bring them up north. You know what I mean? You know, Hacienda hadn't been going long, and Cream hadn't been going long. I think Cream started in about 91, and I think Hacienda was as a dance club was only a couple of years earlier, I think. And so I was like, yeah, get these Americans up. And so I got them as they were flown in, and that flight was amortized amongst the amount of gigs that she got. So she might have done 5 gigs. So, and they weren't flying first class in them days. You know, they were in the economy.
They weren't superstars then, were they?
You know, and they'd have a driver, and I think sometimes she might put them in a hotel that was in the centre of the country, so they could just go back and forth to the hotel to like Leeds to Manchester. Okay. You know, it wasn't like they were. Well, the funny thing was, with Paul Oakenfold, I had Oakenfold on 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times, and we became pretty good mates. And then I remember calling him one day to say, "Oh, Paul wants to come and play a gig," and he goes, "Oh, you'll have to call me new agent." And I'm like, "Who's your new agent? You know, is it not Karen, or is it whatever?" And he goes, "No, it's a guy called David Levy." Who's this David Levy? They said, "You have to call him, he'll sort you out." So I called up this guy called David Levy, and he was like, "Yeah, well, that'll be 1,000 quid." I was like, "What?" I said, "I only pay him 300 usually." He goes, "Yeah." I said, and he goes, "Yeah, and you're the problem with DJs. They can't get on because you just pay them that money, but they're worth more money." And I said, "I'm not paying it." And he goes, "Well, don't pay it then." And I said, "I'm not going to book him again either then." And he goes, "Well, don't book him again then either." And I put the phone down. I'm like, called up Paulie and said, "Hey, he wants 1,000 quid." He goes, "Oh, nothing I can do about it, Steve. You know, it's David Levy." And that was the beginning of the David Levy kind of stranglehold on the music scene, on the DJ scene. I mean, he did a fantastic job, David Levy, I've got to say. Did an amazing job. He made so many DJs into businesses. You know, he gave them careers because he got hold of them, and he weren't letting little scallywags like me just get away with it. You know, he was making it pay.
He guided them and he invested into them. And I think he
did an amazing job. Even though I said, "Well, I'm not paying that, and I'm never going to book him again." He was like, "Well, okay."
And he went back.
You know, I mean,
you soon went back.
But it's funny, and I didn't book Paul for years and years and years until I was in Pacha, and then Paul wanted to play in Pacha, and I'm like, well, how much do you want? And it was a certain person. "I'm not paying you that. I'm paying you this." I reversed the tables on them. And he goes, "You can't do that."
Yeah,
I said,
everything's gone full circle.
Maybe pay 1,000. And I said, "I'm not paying it." So I said, "You got your choice, Paul." I mean, No one fell out. It
That's the
was
thing with this
all good
industry.
fun. Pardon?
Everything in this industry goes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Eventually.
yeah.
It always does, because it's always the same people doing the same things, and I think people forget that. And some of the decisions that people make in this industry are really fucking short-sighted, because it will come back one day and it will bite you on the arse, and
Yeah, yeah.
probably sooner than you think. Agents and managers, so and you know who you are, but sometimes you could be working for people for 20 odd years, and all of a sudden they'll make one decision, and it's like, okay, we just won't fucking book you again. But yeah, no, obviously that was so. You also promoted the Prodigy tour
Well,
as
yeah.
well. Did you the
I
first?
mean, during that period when I was in the Corn Exchange, and I was doing really good. I mean, the Corn Exchange got a lot of attention from around the whole industry because it was such a beautiful venue, and DJs loved to come and
Yeah,
play it. And then the reason I got the Prodigy, I didn't want the Prodigy. I didn't want the Prodigy, but I was trying to do a promotion out of the box, and I wanted to promote E17 because they were doing a comeback, and they had like a new single coming out. So I thought, if I put E17 on, and I was doing the promotion with a partner in Blackpool, and they said we can do the Winter Gardens. It's like 8,000 people,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
hadn't done anything that big before. I was like, yeah, E17, 8,000 people will new single coming back. We'll make a fortune. And the agent said to me, he goes, I'll give you E17. So they've got the single come back. I'll give you that booking, but you have to also do a booking for the Prodigy. I said, I don't really want the Prodigy. I didn't really know enough about the Prodigy, to be honest with you.
They
They
were
weren't
cutting
my
edge
thing.
though, weren't they?
Well, they seemed to me like a student kind of
Really cutting edge at the
electronic
time.
kind
Yeah.
of band, and I didn't really. They only had that song, Charlie Says song,
Yeah.
and
It was right
I
at the start.
wasn't mad about them, and I didn't really understand them. But he said they've got a new album coming out. It's called The Jitty Generation. Said we've got a tour book for them, and all the gigs have done, but we want to do a gig at the beginning of the show. We need to tap one on at the beginning as like it's almost like a rehearsal, for the rest of the tour. I said, well, so if I take E17, then I can have the Prodigy bit. Then I've got to have the Prodigy and do this show. He says, yeah. So, well, I want to be on the poster then. I want it to be like a show. And he goes, yeah, 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 yeah. And so I said, right, then I'll have them then. And I thought I was going to
Yeah.
lose money on them. And it was something like, he wanted something like 3 grand. And I've got to pay for it as well. He said, yeah, it's only 3 grand. I said, you'll smash it. And my driver at the time, I had a driver, because I couldn't trust myself to like drive my own car when I was doing events. It's much easier for me to hire a student to be my driver. And he was always saying, get the Prodigy. I am not kidding you. I reluctantly did it. We put the tickets out, and they sold out physical tickets all over the Northwest, around Blackpool and Manchester and Preston. They sold out literally within about 48 hours. And it was at
Wow.
a club called, I think the club was called The Escape. Might be, you could look at it, there's a poster somewhere. I think maybe because it was like 3,000 capacity as well. And I was like, I cannot
Yeah.
believe it. I've just sold 3,000 tickets
And
in
this
48
word of
hours.
mouth. Word of mouth, yeah.
So, well, we put flyers out. That was it.
That's it. Well, that was the only way though, wasn't it? Really, back then, bit of radio.
All around the Northwest and all these little shops. We had about 30 shops that we were selling tickets through. So, collecting the money was a real pain in the ass. But we had it all, and we couldn't believe it. We were like juggling the money in the air, throwing it in the air like confetti. So then we're thinking, E17 is about 3 weeks after. So, God, we'll clean up on E17, 8,000 tickets, and we'll be loaded. Anyway, Prodigy show came, and they were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. I put Paul Oakenfold on that one as well. And it was people like Loft Groover. Loft Groover was on before Paul Oakenfold, and he was like playing like driller techno.
Yeah,
And
I
Archie
remember Love
said to me,
Groover.
Stevie, what am I going to play? I'm like, you're Paul Oakenfold, you'll be all right. So just pitch one song up fast, and then halfway through, knock it down again, you'll be fine. He's like, Stevie, you don't understand, do you? I'm like, no, I don't, just bloody get on. Again, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. You know, I mean, I really wasn't a fan of the music particularly. I wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, I was just going on instinct and like, just get it done. You know, it'll be fine. We've sold tickets. Everyone's going to love it. But anyway, they were brilliant, the Prodigy. They came on and they blew my mind. They were amazing. And it was before Keith had his hair up. He had long hair at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember they came on and Keith was in a Perspex box, like a little box, like contorted in this Perspex see-through box. And for the first 2 or 3 songs, he was just in the box. And Liam and Maxime and Leonard, they were all doing their thing. I'm like, what's this guy doing? Does he just stay in the box? I think it was Maxime came down and he unlocked the padlock and he broke out of the box, the Keith, and then he just started running around the stage like a madman.
A madman,
Picked up an
yeah,
electric
yeah.
guitar, started flashing this guitar. I'm like, oh, this band are amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Why did I book more gigs with this band?
They were so intense, so
Yeah,
intense. And they got
they were brilliant. I mean, I couldn't understand what they were playing. I couldn't understand the music at all. But the room was going berserk, and then I was going berserk too. I was like, "Oh, these are just something else." I mean, but I think that Jilty Generation tour was a big turning point for them. You know, it took them from you know being just could have been anyone to being superstars. I mean, it really broke them, and I'm proud to say I had the first gig. Just to cap that story off, I did E17, I said 3 weeks later, barely did 3,000 tickets, lost all the money that I made on the Prodigy.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, they didn't. They had a bit of a tough time returning, didn't they? I thought this. I thought this story was going to go a bit downwards because I remember E17 when they returned and it never worked out because they tried it a few times, didn't they?
Well, when they returned, they delayed the single. So I was like, God, man, now the single's not out, you know. So they're supposed to be number one. You know, they're supposed to be number one, but now they're just. The first thing was, though, it was the first time we were selling tickets by credit card because we thought, well, with them, you know, we'll have credit card ticket sales. And the phone was going red hot. So we're thinking, oh, we've got loads of sales because all the stores are on the phones non-stop. But what happened was, he's 17 to play, so a little kid about 12 years old would ring and go, oh, he's 17, can I have a ticket? And the shop would say, well, can you get a parent on, you know, because it's a credit card sale, can you get a parent on? So they put the phone down. Then the phone would ring up with the parent. He's 17, this ticket is, yeah, these are these. I'll have to ask my husband, the phone will go down. Then they're going again, then the husband will come on. Well, he's 17. Okay, let's think about it. Phone will go. Then they'd ring back and, yeah, we'll have a ticket. So it was 4 calls for 1 ticket. So we're thinking we sold 8,000 tickets, but we hadn't. We sold 3,000 tickets.
I've been in a telesales center before, and I know what you mean by that. It's so you think you're doing really well and you're not. So did you know Prodigy they were going to be something special?
Did I know?
You just saw that.
Did I know?
When you saw them perform that first time, did you think, wow, they're gonna explode. These are gonna be huge.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, God, Stevie, you absolute idiot. Why didn't you know already? I mean, your driver knew. My student driver knew. Said, why didn't you know how good this band were? And
is there any other artists?
I just saw that contract. I was like, well, this is stadium music. This is going to be as big as it gets, you know.
And the next
time I saw them after that, they were headlining, I think it was Leeds and Reading. No.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Leeds and Reading Festival I think it was Leeds and Reading Festival, and they were headlining at the one in Reading, and thousands upon thousands of people going absolutely berserk to them. I mean
their music's timeless as well. You can still play it today and get a bigger
saw
reaction.
A clip of them just recently on tour, just not so long ago, and maybe it was from Glastonbury.
Possibly.
And they just, wherever they were in Glastonbury, they just smacked it. And you were like, that should be the main stage, because
Yeah.
there was a main stage in whichever area they were in, but it was just unbelievable. I mean, this was, even just watching through the TV, I mean, they're still incredible. Anyone who goes on after the Prodigy, God help them.
Were there any other artists and DJs that you worked with around that period that you knew were going to come on to become superstars? Like obviously Paul Oakenfold, superstar, Roger Sanchez, superstar, Masters at Work,
Well,
the legendary. I mean, all of
yeah,
them.
but
Did
you
you?
know what? When I met Oki and when I met Roger and Todd Terry, Todd Terry was like, they used to call him Todd is God back then, and Todd was like the kind of the biggest one. Todd is God. Um, but the one that you really knew was gonna be special was when I put Erick Morillo on. And I didn't know a lot about apart from the I Like to Move It song, which was a bit of a jokey song.
Of course, yeah, of
Um,
course.
but then he came and DJ'd. Oh my God. I mean, I'd had Carl Cox on, and he was very special, of course. He was on the 3-deck wizard at the time. Sometimes 4 decks, but it was the 3-deck wizard. And people used to go just to like watch his hands and see what he was doing. But you could see that Carl was special. But Murillo as a DJ, as a personality, as an image, he had it all, and you were like, oh God, this guy's he's gonna be like the top of the tree. He was electric. So yeah, I'd say Eric, he really, really stood out.
So you mentioned Erick Morillo there. Now is that how you went from UK? You went from the UK event scene into an international club culture. How did that happen? Was that something to do with Eric at that point?
No, I mean Eric was just another DJ of the American DJs I had playing, and he wasn't in my mind. I mean the star DJs were Masters at Work, Roger, Todd Terry, Doc Martin, Merck, these people. It weren't. I mean, Eric was just another one really, but when he came and played, he was amazing. No, I got headhunted by a club in Leicester Square called Maximus. Um,
Yes.
they came up and asked me if I'd go and run their club in London, and I'd always wanted to live. The trouble, I wanted to live in London. I always wanted to live in New York, but I only wanted to go to each of them if I had a job to go to. I didn't want to go down and just like check my chances. I wanted to go there with a bedrock, and so it just came along that we were at a Hard Times party, in fact, and some people came up from London and said, "Why don't you come and look after our club in London?" And I was like, "Leicester Square nightclub in London, yay! Come on then, I was like, I'll do that." And eat bar gum, I'll go do that. So I went down and I looked after this club in London for a while, and I had like Bobby and Steve and them kind of people playing, and a lot of the DJs from Kiss FM and what have you. But it was a different thing running the club every single night, and London was a different kind of beast to me, and so it weren't as exciting as it should have been. I mean, it was cool. It was a good experience, but not as exciting as it was could have been. It was a small club as well. And anyway, how I got into the international side was I got offered another job in a multimedia company, and in this multimedia company, they knew I had this background in clubs and DJs, and the multimedia we used to release what we call stuff. It could be like music from the 60s, from the 50s, from the 80s, a collection of Northern Soul, a collection of Elvis Presley, a collection of just anything. And we used to sell it all to Best Buy in America. Best Buy was like the biggest retailer at the time. They had 50% of the retail market. And so we used to supply stuff just to them. Anyway, they knew I had this background in clubs and DJs, and they said, "Oh, we want to. I know there's these cassettes that people record the cassettes and they release them, but we want to make official compilation CDs. So, do you think you can find us the DJs and license the music or the mixes so we can release them?" Well, I knew I could get the DJs because I already knew them all. But when he said licensing music, I didn't have a clue what he even meant by that. You know, I just said, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no, not a problem. I'm thinking, what does he mean, license music? I didn't even know what it meant. I had to I had to then go and ask as many people as I could, you know, what does it mean, licensing music? I had to go bone up on what it was. And then I said to them, you know, to get the right DJs, I'll have to go to America to get them because you want American DJs for the American market. So they said, yeah, let's send it to America. You know, do you think, like, we'll send you 6 or 8 weeks. We'll pre-book flights, like from New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, various other cities. And find the DJs will give you company credit cards. We'll have pre-booked hotels. So you spend like a week in New York, you know, a week in Chicago, a week in San Francisco, a week in LA, a week in Miami. I'm like, wow, I've got the flights booked. I've got these lovely hotels booked. I've got a company credit card. And I'm just going to see the DJs that I already know.
What
So
a
I get to
life.
New York and I called up Roger, went to his house. Roger, do you want to do a CD? We're going to release it in the UK. Oh, yeah, I'd love to.
Job
I
done.
didn't tell him that we're actually going to release it in the UK, but we're going to export it as much as we can back to America. And so I did the same conversation with Roger, Todd Terry, Doc Martin, I said Merck, and then I found this guy in Chicago called Bad Boy Bill. And I'd never heard of him, and I thought the name was hilarious. You know, I thought it must be a farmer or something. You know, Bad Boy Bill, and but he was like the biggest thing in Chicago. He's like, this was a guy who would put out a mix CD on his own record label through a distributor and do between 50 and 100,000 copies. I was like, how the hell? So I managed to convince him that I was going to release a record in the UK, a Bad Boy Bill record. And some might go back to America, you know, because he's got such a big following, so we couldn't stop them. But I said, I'll do your tour in the UK as well. You come on tour, we'll put a record out in the UK and you start breaking the UK. But really, I just wanted to get the records so we could ship them all to Best Buy. And so that's what we did. You know, we did the records. But what an amazing DJ. I mean, wow. That trick DJ, really good. But we sold about maybe 5,000 in the UK. We shipped about 50,000 to Best Buy in America.
How did you figure out the music licensing side of it? Because obviously you
Well,
knew the DJs.
the music licensing, it was like, so, okay, DJ, give me a list of tracks that you want to mix on this thing. So they give me this list of tracks on all these labels. And then I've been the lad who sold me, we've talked about things going around. The lad who sold me E17 and Prodigy was a guy called Richard Smith, who was at Concord Agency at the time with David Levy. He came to work at the multimedia company with me, and he'd also worked at Avex Records for a while. And so we both was working at this multimedia company together. And so Richard said, "No, you got to get in touch with the label, offer them a deal to use the record on the compilation. Like just one use, not as a singer, not just one use, just on that compilation." So I said, all right, then I'll give it a go. So that guy who had lost my money on E17 with actually was my saviour a few years later on, because he told me how to do licensing, which had full circle again, you know, so bizarre.
Yeah.
So then I started
Small
writing to
industry.
all these labels saying, "Oh, I want to license a track for this compilation, 500 quid or 300 quid or whatever it was." And before I know it, I was in negotiations with all these labels about getting these licenses. And I'm like, I like this. this is really cool. This is like, I'll give you 10%. No, I want 12%. No, I'll give you 11%. Then, it's like, oh, back and forth. And I'm like, oh, this is the business of the music business proper. And I was
Were,
seduced by that.
were
I
you a
looked at,
negotiator, a natural negotiator, or did you just have
yeah,
to
I
learn?
became brilliant at it. I became brilliant, and I changed the game as well because I licensed and I put out loads of these compilations, and they did well in America. And then my company sent me to go live in America, sent me to New York to live in New York.
Another
And
dream.
then when I was in New York, I picked up Billboard and I looked in the jobs vacant again, just out of the blue, and I saw it. Subliminal Records, label manager, business affairs wanted. I thought, I can do that. And so I called them up, and I didn't know it was Erick Morillo. Look, I did, but I didn't know it was his label. And when then Morillo was there, and he tried to said, oh, the job's yours. Because he knew I'd done all these
Fantastic.
compilations with this Master Tone Records label, and I'd licensed some tracks from him. And also in Miami one time I was doing the opening party for Winter Music Conference, the official opening party down at a big open air space right at the end of South Beach. And Murillo came to the door with a big entourage, and someone came and said, "Oh, Ed Murillo's at the door. Can we get him in?" And I went to the door and I said, "Who's with you?" And it was about 20 people. And I just said, "In you come." And I waved them all in. So Murillo, we kind of connected because, I was cool to
Yeah.
him. But so I'd put him on in Leeds. I'd licensed a couple of records for him, and then I let him in music conference. And then as soon as I was in his office in front of him, telling him how his label, the label Subliminal was a really, really cool label, but it could be much, much bigger than it already is. And I explained how, and he said, "Oh, the job's yours." And so, how did I change the
Mm.
game? What I did was, I said, "Look, you got a big catalogue of records, and we want it to be even bigger and bigger." And all the records were club hits. And I said, "What we're going to do label deals. We're going to do label deals in as many countries in the world as possible." So that doesn't mean we're going to have a record, then license the record, like a hot record. So out of every 10 records, you might have 2 that are hot, and you do the licensing with 2 of them. I was like, no, we're going to license all of them, like a label deal. So I said, we're going to do label deals everywhere. So that means that the whole catalogue is going to sit with the labels, but we're going to control what they can do with it. So if they want to compile it, if they want to release them, they have to approve it through us. So we'll be like a major label in a way. So I ended up doing label deals in about 40 countries around the world. Russia, Dubai, Mexico, South Africa, Japan, Italy, France, Germany, everywhere. Everywhere I could do a deal, I did a deal. And because you're doing a label deal, it was big money.
Can you explain how the label deal works again?
Yeah.
You lost me a little bit on that because
So
I
what
want to
you do
know
is
how that changed things.
yeah, well, see, I'd go to, say, Mass, it's a label, plus Mass in Mexico, and say, right, you're going to have our entire catalogue. You're going to have the access to the name, to the logos and everything, and you're going to work our catalogue in Mexico. But you're going to pay us 100 grand for the privilege of it, and you're going to give us a royalty on every sale that you've made. So you recoup the royalty part of it, and then you pay the royalty. You pay the royalties through to us. And when we have a big record, you're going to release it when we say. So when we have a big record, release it simultaneously around the world. So it's like a major label then. It's like one release, bam, everywhere. So Murillo, he was worried about when we had a big record, we wouldn't get the licensing money that you get on one record. I said, no, but you're going to have a lot of money for the catalogue, and the catalogue's going to be working in every territory. It's on the label deal. And you're not relinquishing the control of it. They're just going to be, another company is going to be paying for the privilege of doing what we tell them to do with the catalogue. And they're going to be investing in it. So Mexico might have a record that's big there, but it's not big anywhere else. But great. That happened with a song called Praise Cats in France. Praise Cats was a good record, but in the French deal, they picked that song out. They put a video of it and made it a hit record. That then became a hit record in the UK. So the label deal was much different to like having a big record and then licensing it to 20, 30, 40 different labels and compilations or whatever. I had like 40 label deals around the world. So we were suddenly a powerhouse then. You know, Subliminal was everywhere. And we could do Subliminal parties all over the world as well.
After New York and after your connection with Subliminal and this new work you were doing with their label, how long were you doing that for? And then how does Ibiza fit into all of this?
Yeah. I moved to New York in 1999 and I started with Morillo in 2000, January 2000. And I finished with Subliminal at the end of, well, actually I finished in 2006, but I moved at the end of 2005. So it was 5 years, 5 really strong years in Subliminal. But in 2005, my mother got ill and she lives in England and I wanted to be closer to her. I'm a mummy's boy, was a mummy's boy, always was. And I wanted to be closer to her, but I didn't want to move back to England. And Subliminal had the Wednesday party at Pacha since about 2003, I think it was. And I remember Danny Whittle had come over to meet us. And, you know, we'd had good meetings with him. Me and Danny got on really good straight away. And then we had the party was going well in Subliminal, you know. I think it was 2002, 2003. I can't quite remember when it started. It might have been 2002 even. But the party was going great. And Danny and I got on well. And then I remember saying to him, I need to come back to the Europe because my mum's ill. I want to move back to the Europe. And I was just having a chat with him, just as mates. And he said, why don't you come and work at Pacha, run the Pacha record label for me?
Awesome. What an offer.
And I was like, are you sure? He said, look what you've done with Subliminal. He said, we've got a record label, but it's not doing anything. You know, we don't own any content. We just license the name here, there, and everywhere. And I'm like, no. I said, no, you've got to earn content.
Because Danny's far from stupid.
You haven't got a record label. You're just a brand. And so I said, well, there's no way. So can you come and do for us what you did with Subliminal? So I said, yeah, okay. So he brought me to Ibiza and he says, right, you're now this is Stevie's boss of record label, and that became boss of multimedia department. And I did exactly that. I started, because they had no content. They'd licensed the name to other record labels to do a Subliminal compilation. I said, how much are you getting paid for that? And it was like, to give them $1,000 for using the name or something. I was like, this is madness. So I started creating catalogue, and I created a lot of catalogue really, really quickly. And I said, right, we're going to release loads of compilations ourselves. So that in Ibiza, when you go to any of the places where there's records and CDs being sold, we'll have a whole shelf of them. So that when people, I don't mean music aficionados, but people just wanting to buy a piece of Ibiza, they're going to pick one of ours up before they pick up somebody else's.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to dominate the market so that all them impulse buys will be ours. Because if Space have got one compilation out and Amnesia got one compilation out, I've got 10. You know.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
I've got 8 more.
I remember seeing them.
Than theirs. So now I said, we're going to do label deals all over the world. And I did the same thing and repeated with label deals all over the world. So now we're releasing around the world something like 50 compilations a year in all the territories around the world. That's a business. So yeah.
Because nothing is more Ibiza than a Pacha t-shirt or a Pacha CD, is it? Back in the day,
Well,
I don't know what if it is now, but we always used to pick up those sort of things. If you're going to get a souvenir to take home, it's a Pacha CD or a Pacha t-shirt,
I mean, I was
and
very much
that was
aware
it.
that being from when I'd done 10 years coming to Ibiza as a visitor before I moved here, and I
Mm.
knew on your bucket list you had to go to Pacha, and if you're going to get a t-shirt, you're probably going to get a Pacha one, the
Or
iconic
the
cherries.
space
And if
one.
you're going to take a CD, you're gonna take the Pacha CD. And I said, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about but people who are not really into the music, but they want to take something home for their daughter, their niece, or whatever. They're usually picking up a Pacha CD, a Pacha something because it's Ibiza. And so I wanted to tap right into
The
that. Like,
cherries
yeah, I was
behind me.
like, I was like, let's capitalize on that. And they said, oh, but there's too many in the market. It'll dilute the brand. I was like, it won't dilute the brand. It'll make the brand a market leader. You know, you will dominate every store because there'll be more of your CDs than anyone else. And only aficionados might go, oh, I'm not having that. Everyone's got it. I'm going to take this one, you know, like some obscure something. So, but the general people coming here are not music aficionados. They're just people having a good time. It's like a kiss me quick hat. Get it sold.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. Look how successful the Pacha shops were or are. Just knocking out their own gear. I mean, we had one in San Antonio. It was
That's another thing. I mean, I remember at the time saying, listen, you're missing a beat with these Pacha shops because the Pacha shops weren't theirs. They were all franchises. So people would pay a license to have the Pacha name on it, and Pacha would sell them the T-shirt, and then they would sell the T-shirt and keep it. I said, why don't you make why are you licensing the name? Just open up the stores yourself. You know, then you're your own supplier, your own seller. You know, you get 100% of the money. You know, not the sale of the T-shirt at cost. You know, you get the sale of the T-shirt at retail with no one in between.
yeah.
Anyway, they didn't want to listen to that. But that's a proper business.
I remember the Pacha stores. This is just from a worker viewpoint. At the end of the summer, when a lot of people were going home, I lived there the winters, but at the end of the summer, when you had your final payment, you had a bit of a bonus. Where did we go? The Pacha shop to
Yeah.
get, because it was closing down for the summer. They had all the offers on, and everyone would be coming out with the trousers and the jumpers and the t-shirts, and it was just that was the Pacha t-shirt, Pacha crash helmets, Pacha trousers. That was just like
Crash
that was your
helmets.
souvenir. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Pacha scooter ones. And I remember that was just like the pinnacle souvenir.
Yeah.
But to
I mean,
for anyone to take home.
The days when Danny Whittle was there, when I was there, two or three other people. I mean, maybe we're just looking back through cherry tinted glasses, but they really were the halcyon days. I mean,
Yeah.
up until that for me was, and I said, we're maybe looking at it through cherry tinted glasses, but that was the best time of Pacha that I can remember. That 10-year period was amazing. I mean, then when Danny parted company with them, they then said to me, "Oh, you're now doing the bookings as well." So I was running the record label and multimedia, and then I had to do the bookings too. So I had 3 years of doing the bookings there, and that was you know, it was exciting, but I always thought it was just a crazy mistake to fall out for them to fall out with Danny, and because he made that company what it is, what it was, and no one can tell me different to that. If Danny hadn't been there, maybe Pacha would have become like Esparadiso or something, but Danny being there dragged it, whether they liked it or not, into the bigger world. He gave them the bigger picture. He made it the coolest club in the world. You know, with all that he did there. And they should have done everything they could to keep Danny on board.
That's a massive accolade for Danny. I remember those years with Pacha, and they were incredible years.
Danny and I come from the same background. You know, we're both council kids. We both into all kinds of different music, but we weren't really into house music like everybody else was. I mean, yeah, we ended up loving it, but we really, he and I loved the business of the business much more than anything else. I think it's the deal making and the having a vision and making that vision happen. You know, that's what's sexy to people like Danny and I. Yeah, we can enjoy the music as good as anyone, but putting on an event and seeing that event happen, or wanting to do a record with a certain artist and making that happen, that's the real kick for people like Danny and I. You know, and Danny put his heart and soul into Pacha. He brought on people like me because he knew it was the right thing to do. I mean, all the people he brought on, it was the right thing to do every time. When he brought DJs on, he brought them on not just because he personally liked them or not. He brought them on because it was a smart and clever thing to do for the company. They have no idea. I don't think they really gave Danny they did give Danny the respect that he deserved or the acknowledgement that he deserved, because that company would never have been a 350 million euro company if it hadn't been for Danny. Just guaranteed it wouldn't have been.
No, I agree with that.
And from what he did there, it didn't just change the music in Ibiza. It changed the music. It changed the scene, the music business, the whole world over to do house music. You know, because that was the leader, and everything else followed. So yeah, I can't give Danny a higher praise. Look, and you know, Danny's a good friend of mine. You know, but he's not. You know, we're not best friends. You know, but we're good friends. We're neighbours, in fact. But I say it from the heart. In my book, I mentioned something along these lines as well. You know that
when you were programming Pacha, who did you bring in? What was your era? What were your nights that you
I
started
didn't bring the
there?
healers in, but I brought Solomon in.
Did you?
You know,
Okay.
yeah, I did the deal with Solomon to bring Solomon in because Luciano was a Sunday star. I bet Luciano was very close with Danny, and Luciano, he basically, when it came to the new deal for the new season, he gave us an option that was impossible to accept. You know, I won't go into what the other, but what he wanted was untenable, and so we said, okay, I guess we have to part ways. And I think Luciano really wanted to go and be where Danny was. You know, so that's maybe why he gave us an offer that was so crazy. You know, that no one could have done it. So in the slipstream of that, you know, I got Solomon. I managed to. Solomon was looking to move to somewhere bigger, but I offered him a deal he couldn't refuse as well. You know, it was like a deal he'd never had before, and it was 3-year deal, so it was safe for Pacha too. But
Well,
I remember when I put him in there, and the hierarchy at Pacha saying, "Oh, who's this Solomon guy? No one ever heard of him. It's going to be a disaster." But the first 2 nights were okay, but weren't great. And they were used to them being brilliant with Luciano. And so the night manager and the VIP manager, "Oh, you fucked this up, you know, we should have Luciano." And I couldn't explain to them, I couldn't make them see sense that, you know, what Luciano wanted was just unbelievable, was untenable. And I said, but just I said, come and talk to me again in 4 weeks' time. But by the 3rd week, it just went bam.
Yeah.
And then
that time catapulted Solomon, didn't it? It really did make him fly. Yeah, I remember that very well.
It just went massive after the 3rd week, and then, you know, then he's just, well, he's been there over 10 years now. You know, he's a superstar, and and everything else. But it's funny, he never mentions me in any of his interviews. I'm kind of written out of his story. I don't know why.
So how long did you work for Pacha?
I
What was
was
your
there
stint
10 years
there
in
as?
total.
Yeah, and when did you leave?
2015.
Okay. And how did you keep Pacha credible and commercial? How did you keep them ahead of the times in the final few years you were there and you were programming? How did you know what
Well,
talent was going to work? The work that Danny did, a lot was expected of you.
yeah, the thing is, Danny be the first to admit, you don't get them all right. You
Yeah.
get some of them wrong. And when they're wrong, they really stand out as being wrong. Like, I put on Guy Gerber,
Yeah.
Wisdom of the Glove. And when I booked him, everyone was saying, oh, that's a great booking. Guy could be the next Solomon, or Luciano, or
Yeah.
one of them guys. Because when he played at Cocoon, he'd be like, the main guy. When he was at DC10, he was like the main guy. And everybody loved Guy Gerber. And when
Yeah.
we put him on, thought it was going to be great. And then the guy is such a weird person. And he's just all about the musicality of everything, and so some of the bookings that he wanted to be that we made, it was like, this is maybe great for DC10, but not great for a Wednesday in Pacha, like
Are you on about
some of the music was like,
Are you on about support artists for him?
yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah,
and
that's
even Guy
important.
himself. Some nights a guy would play like the greatest DJ in the world, musically it'd be bouncing, it'd be brilliant. Then the next night he'd come in and be all experimental. It's it's very hard to maintain that party, but it was very, very credible. One night I had in the DJ booth, it was back to back to back, Guy Gerber, Forte, and Nicholas Jar. That's that's about as good as it gets in terms of credibility. They were back to back to back. I remember the VIP manager saying, "What's this shit?" The VIP don't like it. What's this shit? Get the resident back on. All like is Nicholas Jar. He's just filled a Decidino like 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
I put Chucky on. We thought that Chucky could become, get into that David Guetta territory. But his management wanted so much that, they wanted so much like extra stuff on the night, not Chucky. Chucky was great, but it was all the hangers on around him. Instead of 2 bottles of champagne, it was 20. And then it'd be like, oh, we need 40. All this rubbish.
Plus,
And so when you get like that,
plus.
it becomes really hard work to work with people. Not the artist. He was great. Steve Aoki is another one. Steve Aoki was great to work with, always sell tickets. But his management at the time, Michael, God bless him, he's gone now. But this guy just made working so hard, so and such an awful experience. Because he was just push, never stop pushing. Nothing was ever enough. So even though Steve was amazing and filled the club and everything like that, but the club with the management were like, oh God, do we really want this hassle? Whatever you give them, they always want more.
Yeah. I totally identify with that, because sometimes when you go to book an artist, you're like, oh, they're great, but I just can't fucking deal with them. The management or whatever, all the pluses that go on top of it. It's the entourages. It's all the bullshit that comes with it. And after time, we'll swerve it. We will swerve it, and we do swerve it.
Yeah, it's like, working with Carl Cox is a dream. Because his management are super cool. He's super cool. He doesn't ask for what he doesn't need. He gets what he wants.
I know.
And that's it. It's not, but there's other artists, like say, but Michael, he was a character, Michael. He's gone now, bless him. But you could say to Michael could say, I want a hotel. Let's say I get a hotel. I want it 5-star. Yeah, 5-star. I want the presidential suite. You're not a president. you're not the president. I want the president. Then I also want the one next door to him. It's like, it becomes too much. You end up saying, let's not work with this guy. It's too much hassle with it. Exactly what you're saying. So, even though the artist was, I mean, I've worked with Stevie's agent's great, and Steve's great. They're never any hassle, but back in them days, when Michael was there, it was awful. So everyone in the club kind of hated Steve because we all hated his manager. So
Yeah,
but I also put
totally.
on John Digweed and MK on the same bill. That was a really good one. It was
Excellent.
John Digweed was the return of John. Basically, he was brilliant. He had 10 headliners, and MK had 10 headliners, and then with them we had people like Green Velvet and lots of really good stuff around them. Groove Armada and what have you. And that night was called Insane, and that night was building up to be a really nice night, really credible music. All the Brits used to come out for John, all the Brits used to come out for MK, so it was full house. It was really, really good. It was a real success. And then on the Saturday, I put on, I had 10 shows with Bob Sinclair and 10 shows with Martin Solveig, which, Martin Solveig, Bob Sinclair, it's not the same DJ, but musicality-wise and hit-wise and both friends, it's almost the same thing. And on a Saturday, it was perfect. The VIP loved it. So that went really good. So, it was great for the Saturday. Fridays was really, really cool with John Digweed and MK and all the guests we had with them. Solomon was obviously a breakout hit. And then I changed Flower Power from 10 or 11 parties a year to 22 parties a year. Like they played the whole season. And that was a breakout hit as well because it never made so much money because it had 20, 22 shows to it, and it was
so
cheap as chips.
Yeah,
But,
it was brilliant brand, and there was it felt like at times there wasn't enough Flower Powers.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you had no consistency. It would be on for 2 weeks, and off for 3 weeks, and on for 3 weeks, and off for 2 weeks, and so no. If they want Flower Power, they should do it every week. Flower Powers it is. And they said, but people get bored. What are you talking about? Every week it's a new crowd who want to come and experience Flower Power. And I was right. It was packed. So I had a good Flower Power. I had, when Steve Burke was there, that was packed. That was good. David Guetta was still there when I was there. It was packed. Insane with Digweed and MK was great. Martin Solveig and Bob Sinclair was great. Son was great. But, Wisdom of the Double with Guy Gerber and Chucky, not so good. And then I did Ibiza Rocks House, which was a mad night. It was amazing. It was had so much animation everywhere. It was like Manny Mission Mark II without the sex. And they only give that one season to and I said, dude, we signed it late. Let this percolate because it's a cheap night. It's all about animation. It's like Elro. And look at Ibiza Rocks now. I mean, with Pikes. I mean, Pikes at 528 is massive.
Yeah.
And Pikes itself is massive. I'm like, dude, these guys have their own travel agency in London. They bringing people to the island. They bring them to Pacha. We've got to keep them. So there's lots of internal things. So I understood why Danny was so pissed at one point, because there's so many internal people like chatting, and only interested in their own department. Whereas for Danny and I, we were trying to look out for the entire club, the name of the club. I did get the club at number 2 in the best clubs in the world chart, and at number 2 and number 3, number 2 and number 3. So I did that. That was the highest it had ever been.
Going. I mean, it's a problem when you work with corporations.
I didn't get no prize for that, and I didn't get any bonus for it, though.
Let's talk about your book. Vainglorious, a punk in the house.
Yeah.
Okay. What inspired you to write your book?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I always knew I was going to write a book, even from being young. I just needed to have a story to tell. To get a story to tell, I had to live a story, I had to live a life. And so once I'd got to a certain point, I thought, oh, this is a good point now to get it all down and get it all written down. And painstakingly it did. It took me a few years to get it down. And then over the last 2 years, I then worked with an editor to get it into. I mean, I gave the editor something like 240,000 words that were, as he describes it, barely punctuated.
That's
And
a
he
lot of
whittled it
words.
down to something like 130,000
130. Yeah,
words.
my business partner is writing a book at the moment, and that's the point he's aiming for.
Yeah.
130
Well,
k. He's flown over.
it's supposed to be between 90 and 110. But,
Okay.
but mine's a 360-page book, and it was whittled down enough. But what? I mean, I had to cut loads of stuff off. What we're left with is dynamite. I mean, it it's supposed to come out on November the 4th, but Amazon are like a law to themselves. And as soon
Yes,
as you
they are.
press the button to manufacture a book, it goes down. Amazon directly stick it on for sale. So as soon as your manufacturer starts printing, because they're connected with all the online stores, Amazon straight away go, it's available now. It's not. It's available. I wanted to say November the 4th, but on October the 3rd, it was suddenly online. And so I said, oh, okay, so it's out. And to my surprise, it went in the punk music bestsellers chart. It got as high as number 6. And it's been in the
Okay.
top 10 for the month. And it's dropped down now, but it'll probably go up again. And then in America, it was number 2 in the punk rock hot new releases chart. So, and it's still in the top 10 over there now as well, which I'm completely surprised about, and I'm like, who the hell's
Keep
buying
going.
this book, But
And you haven't even started the promo yet.
no, I mean, the
That's something you're good at.
the launch is actually next week. The launch is actually next Sunday in Leeds, and
Yeah.
and promo wise, I haven't even got a copy of the book myself yet. I haven't got it in my hand. But I was really chuffed with those chart positions, and the title "Vainglorious" is like that's like a shout for like people who just who have the balls to go for it, to win or lose, even
Yeah.
go out
Was
in
it
the ball
everything
of
in?
glory, or go down fighting, or
was it no holds barred? Everything in, or did
yeah,
you have to?
warts
Yeah,
and all,
yeah,
yeah.
warts and all. No,
And then the
that's the
punk in the
way.
house, I think, is just a really clever, cheeky little play on. I was
It's
a
really
punk
clever.
and went to house music. But no, everything's in there. There's loads of celebrities in there, little encounters I have with them, and I'm very honest with myself in it. I mean, I write about all the darker stuff. Make no apology for it. And I write about all the good stuff. It's a ripping yarn. I mean, people who
Yeah,
read it, it's a page turner. It's a quick read, because there's
yeah.
always something going on. There's a lot of funny stories in there as well.
Ha-
I mean, the
have you still got your?
funny story was one of the funniest stories was with Puff Daddy when we were doing a record with Puff Daddy, and I won't go through the whole story, but there was one point where it was me. We were there. I was over with Erick Morillo. We wanted to do him and Puff Daddy were going to do a song together, and so we're walking down a corridor towards Puff Daddy's studio, and so there was Erick Morillo was front left, Puff Daddy's assistant was front right, Puff Daddy was back left, and I was back right, so we're at 2 by 2. So I'm walking next to Puff Daddy, and Puff Daddy, he goes to me, he goes, "Yeah, so what's up, what's up?" And I go, "Chilling." And Puff Daddy was like, "What?" And I go, chilling. It's like, is this guy throwing gang shapes at me? What's he talking about? Chilling. He looked at me like, oh. So as we kept on going, Puff Daddy and Eric are trying to talk, but Eric's having to lean all the way back, and Puff is having to lean forward. So I thought we need to swap places, me and Puff Daddy, so that Puff Daddy can be where I am. So Eric just had to look over his shoulder, not do the exorcist. And Puffy kind of got it. And as I started moving, well, Puff Daddy had one of them hip hop limps, where they drag the foot a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And as we crossed over, I caught his back leg and tripped him up. So he went falling down the corridor. But to try and stop himself from falling, it was like one of them cartoons, where the legs and arms goes really, really fast to stop the stuff face planting. And he kept himself up, but he gave me the look again, like. So as we go on, we get to the doorway, and he pushes between Morillo and the assistant, and he gets to the doorway, and he opens the door, and he lets Morillo through. He lets his assistant through, and then I'm coming to the door. And as I'm going through the door, he goes through at the same time. So we both wedged in the door together, like doing the tango through the door. I just pushed through, but again, he's like, but I'm like, I'm the guest. But then we sat inside, and Murillo pulls out this CD and says, these are the beats. And he gives him this CD of beats. And I'm not kidding you, it's literally a bass drum and a snare, standing going boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, like as simple as it can be. And Eric is going like this, Puff Daddy's going like this, and the scissors going like this, and I'm like, what? And then they start going, oh, that's nasty, that's nasty. Puff Daddy's going, it's nasty. That's going, yeah, it's nasty, it's nasty. And then he says to us, what do you think? It's nasty. And he goes, what do you think? And I go, I think he's got some bad intentions. He gave me the eyes again, like get the fuck out of here. The whole meeting was a complete disaster.
Yeah, and it's.
But apart from, they ended up doing 2 or 3 songs together.
I was about to say, did you do much work together?
And there's the funny thing about this. I mean, at the time, nobody knew all the stuff that was going to come out about either of them.
Yeah, of course, both of them. I haven't really kept touch with a lot of all that stuff.
That was the time and the place, So I mean, I had to tell the story, but I have to preface it with, look, whatever came out afterwards. But at the time, none of that stuff existed. Puff Daddy was the toast of the music world. He was.
They both were.
He was a music mogul, and Murillo was the toast of the dance world. But yeah, I mean, it's a true story. That.
Good grief. So, what's your take on the current Ibiza landscape? Because obviously you're living out there now.
Yeah, I've been here 20 years.
You've been out there 20 years. How's your Spanish?
My Spanish is good. I mean, I can speak Spanish.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I speak Spanish.
And
I mean, I must say, it's fluent. But I mean, in my house, we only speak Spanish. My wife's Cuban, and so we only speak Spanish in my house.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, what do I think of the scene? I mean,
what are you doing in Ibiza now? Are you just chilling?
I try to do as little as possible, and I consult if asked. So I consult occasionally, and then apart from that, I try to do nothing. I have a couple of houses that I rent. I'm just about to sell one as well, and I'm kind of almost retired. I'm gloriously
I get it.
I'm gloriously contented.
I can't wait to read your book. It sounds absolutely fascinating. You've lived it's quite a journey just listening to what you've said on here today.
It's a crazy ride. You'll enjoy it. But so what do? I do sometimes do some consulting for brands. Like if a drink brand wants a DJ, I get the DJ for them. And that usually is well paid stuff. That's once in a blue moon. You know, it's like twice a year or something, which is great for me. But then, other than that, I tried to do nothing, and I'm going to write a second book, which is already half commissioned. But it's not an autobiography. This is more of a reportage, and this one is actually about the blowing the lid of Ibiza and the reality of what makes Ibiza tick and who made it tick. And I mean, I always read about, oh, look how wonderful, Pepe from Space is, what he did there. And I'm like, he didn't do jack shit. He didn't do nothing. It was the people around him who did it,
Yeah.
They got the credit, but what did he do? He
Mm,
stood up and stands in the booth for a minute or two, but he didn't do the bookings. He didn't do the promotion. Didn't do anything. And I hear the same thing about Ricardo from Pacha. Oh, the architect of the night. I'm like, no, the architect of the night was Danny Whittle, not him.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I
You know,
kind of
I agree. I agree with you on that.
it's gonna be a kind of a contentious book, and it's gonna
Isn't
rub
it?
some people up the wrong way.
I'm looking
But
forward
I
to that
don't
one.
care because I'm 62 now, and
You don't
you
give a
get to
fuck.
that age and you don't give a damn. You're
Absolutely.
like,
Good on you, because I was speaking to a TV company the other day about how I lived in the West End in San Antonio during the crazy 2000s, late 90s, and no one's ever really understood the full story behind what's gone on there, because all these fucking shitty TV companies come in and make these horrendous documentaries about the drugs and this and that. Always miss the fucking point about the community and the underworld and the actually what happens, And I said to this TV company, because they made the recent Tony DeVee documentary. I go, you should get on that, do a documentary about the real San Antonio, the real how
yeah,
it worked and how it was an entry point to the island for so many people. Um,
yeah.
but because the job they did on Tony DeVee's documentary was amazing, and that would be more of what you're talking about, the real fucking story.
I wrote 3 chapters for my agents because when they were shopping Vainglorious, they said, "Oh, can you do more on the IB from and dance and Pacha stuff? Because that's going to be easier to sell." I said, "No." I said, "This is my legacy book.
Yeah.
It's my
Okay.
autobiography. So it is what it is." I said, "But let me write you 3 chapters of what I think my next book is." And I wrote 3 chapters. I'm like, "Oh God, that's dynamite. Yeah, do it." And it's quite an easy book to write because when you're writing from a third party looking in, rather than being in the middle of it all, rather than writing from being in the center of it all, which is quite hard to do. You have to take a lot of yourself in it. But when you just write a reportage on the subject, it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
easier to handle. The pressures are completely different. And also, as I say, when you're at a certain age
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're
yeah.
gloriously content, you don't
Y-
need anyone to give you a helping hand, and you don't give a shit if anyone,
Good on you.
wants to
Good.
put you down. But
Revealed.
also the people, I mean, people like your guy,
So,
Nick Ferguson.
yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, Nick needs his own plaque in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows San Antonio better than he does in terms of
Yeah.
how to make a party work there. All the stuff he
How?
did before with Cream and everyone, Kanye, the whole thing. I mean, it's an unsung hero, really.
Yeah,
And there's
because there's
loads of them.
Nick is one of those people that he likes to try to keep out the limelight with, as far as like his name. A lot of the promoters, they really enjoy to be, I'm the promoter of this event, blah blah. Nick's very much
Yeah,
business, numbers.
yeah,
How to That's not going to work. That's musically not going to work. I've had 4 messages from him already throughout this conversation with you. He's extremely organized, extremely active. AD's just happened. We've launched half of our events before AD's even just started. That's how quick he
yeah,
is. And he is just phenomenally well organized. And I think sometimes the venues that we work for take that for granted. That sort of
yeah.
ingrained experience, really short sighted, because if you lose those sort of people, there's not a lot of them left with that
No,
sort of
no. Well,
experience.
So a lot of these institutions and what have you. A lot of people get a lot of credit where it's not really due, and a lot of people due the credit don't get it at all.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not even really to apportion credit. It's just about telling reality
Fucking ego as well,
of,
isn't
you
it,
know,
Steve?
what you're being egoing about. What you're egoing about, you know, you have some real teeth to it, you know, that you can back it up with activities, with things that you literally did. You know, I don't mind ego. If you did something good, then to me, I don't mind. Shout as loud as you want, you know, because I'll be the first to give you the applause. But if you didn't do jack shit and you're taking the credit for it, then I'm going to call you out,
Good on
you
you.
know.
Keep on saying
So,
that. But I'm looking forward to the second book, I tell you. Steve, I've had you for 2 hours. One of my longest ever podcasts, but I knew it was going to be because there's so much depth into this.
it's
Thank
okay.
you.
You'll be able to whittle it down to an hour.
No, I won't do. I'm going to leave most of this in because I've really enjoyed this. I'm going to ask you if just one more question, as the podcast is called One More Tune. Do you have a particular one more tune that you have an affinity to for, say, Ibiza, that you'd have as a last tune of the night? Maybe. Obviously, you've been
Yeah,
involved in a lot of music.
I mean, there's two tunes that I speak about in the book, in the first chapter, that one of them's like a peak hour rather than the end of the night, which is Farley Jack Master Funk and Della Pandy Love Cat Turn Around.
Yep.
But that's like, for me, that's a classic peak hour song to put on.
Yeah.
And that's in my book. There's a whole funny scenario around that song. And then also in the same piece, it's the final song that the DJ before me plays. And really, it's a song that he should play at the end of the night. And it was Follow Me by Alias.
What a great track.
Yeah. And
2003.
this whole scenario in the book is where I'm off my head and I'm paranoid and I'm thinking when he plays that song, I'm like, is that a challenge? You know, follow me, or is it just good vibes? You know, and I'm like, you know, I'm so paranoid. You know, like I'll follow you, motherfucker. You know, like, you know, or is he really saying that? I don't know. But
So
I've
that was
always loved that song. Follow
absolute
me.
anthem. It was 2003. Am I correct? And it was just an absolute anthem. And I'll never forget it because my best friend Lee in Ibiza, he used to love that tune, and everyone used to call him Follow Lee. And he was the bartender. And every time it come on in Don Juan above Mega Music, he used to come on, and as he was walking around, everyone used to follow him. You know, we've got some really good memories of that track. And I tell you
I
what,
remember being in Subliminal one time and Elias turned up at the studios. I was like, oh, wow. I was like, and he goes, oh. And I was like,
yeah,
oh, yeah, just a local guy. You know, but I was like, no, that Follow Me is like one of them songs that just out of the whole house music song. The end of the night, put that song on, can never go wrong with that.
I think some producers don't realize how much some tracks mean to people. Like I met one of my favorite producers ever, and one of my favorite ever tunes. I'm not going to say what it was, but I was like, oh, your tune! Oh my god, it's amazing! I love this tune so much. And he was like, and you know what he said to me? The worst thing ever. He went, you do realize I've got other records out since, and I was just like, and he just totally blew my love for this guy, and I was just like, oh, what a wanker.
Yeah,
You know, I'm not going to say it was,
I tell you,
but I
a
was just
funny one with
so
Swedish House
disappointed.
Mafia. Before they became Swedish House Mafia, we did Top of the Pops with Who the Funk, Shiny Disco Balls, and
Oh, wow.
I had to take them to do the Top of the Pops, and it was a thrill to me to be Top of the Pops. But anyway, in the hotel
Yeah.
that we were staying at, there was two guys there who came over and befriended me because I had a Subliminal T-shirt on. And these two guys are like, oh, we love Subliminal Records, and we're producers too, and do you want a drink? And I ended up drinking with these two guys, and I said, we're producers too, I've got here, do you want to hear some music? And they gave me 10 CDs packed with music. And I said, well, I'll take it back to New Jersey and I'll play it to Eric, and, you know, hopefully we can do something. Took it back, and it was like, nah, everything's rubbish on that. I was like, come on, 10 CDs worth, that's like about 100 tracks at least. Said, nah, all rubbish. I was like, ask them if they've got anything else. I'm like, oh, no, man. So this is back in 2002 or something, or maybe 2001. So I had to call them, there's no like WhatsApp in there. And I call, got any more music? Yeah, we'll send you a package out. They couldn't just send me music electronically. They had to send a package. So
Yeah, I
they
remember.
sent me
Yeah.
another 10 CDs. And it goes, oh, there's nothing on there. Like, come on. That's 20 CDs worth of music. You've got to pick 2 songs just for the effort. So I said, go on then. We'll pick any 2 songs and we'll put a record out for them. But we're not paying them in advance. It's 50-50 publishing. And we'll give them like a 15% royalty or 20% royalty or something. And I said, okay, but how about this? Let's have them also play for us at Miami Winter Music Conference. He said, well, only if they're there. If they're in Miami, fine. I'm not going to fly them there. But if they're there, then they can play at Space with me. So I said, great. And I said, and how about this? Let's have them mix the next compilation, Subliminal Sessions 5. So he goes, go on then. Anyway, that turned out to be Steve Angelo and Sebastian Ingrosso.
My Lord.
So that's how it all got going for them. And then years later, about 2 years ago, I did an event at Chinois for Patron Tequila, one of my consultancies. And the DJs that I had on was Swedish House Mafia, but we couldn't put all 3 of them on for contractual reasons. So it was just going to be Sebastian and Axwell. And then in the end, it was only Axwell was there. So Axwell comes down. And now, so this is from, because I met Axwell, well, about 3 months after I met Steve and Seb. But Axwell comes in and everyone's like fussing over Axwell. So it's like 2002, so it's like over 20 years. And Axwell comes in, he goes, Stevie, long time no see. And he goes, and the room's packed with all the good and the great of Ibiza. And Axwell goes, this will blow your mind, Stevie. What's this? And he says, my iPhone. It's the same iPhone that I got with my first iPhone. It's just, I've never changed it. He said, but look at this. And he puts his iPhone on. There's a photograph of me and Axwell from about 15 years ago. And he goes, that's the first photograph I took on this phone. And I always remember it. I always remember everything you did for the Swedish House Mafia. And I was like, wow.
Awesome.
Now, these are as big as they get, but what a beautiful thing.
Lovely.
And Sebastian, I was once in the garden in Pacha, and he came in drunk as a lord, and everyone was, oh, Sebastian. And he sees me, so I was like, stay there. And he goes, he's the one who put us on that way. And I was like, because, I signed the first record, with Subliminal Records. And
fucking hell.
I love it when guys don't forget who they are,
Yeah, they haven't got bigger than the music. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just the same great guys.
Brilliant. Stevie, on that note, I'm gonna love you and leave you. That's been absolutely fascinating. I don't know how I'm going to get through this on an edit. It's going to take me hours. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best for your book. And please let me know about the second book. And thank you for sparing the time with me on your very first podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.